Hello, my name is Richard Corbett from emergebydesign.net, and welcome to my weekly human design and astrological forecast starting on Monday, April 21st through Sunday, April 27th. Well, yesterday on Sunday, we had our third quarter moon. So this week, we're moving into the last week of this lunar cycle. Every month, that is a wonderful time to collect ourselves, reflect on the month. What's happened? What's taken place? What did it mean to us? What are we learning from this new emotional experience the moon brings us each month? And we'll be doing that. In fact, on Sunday this week, we'll be having our new moon in Taurus. So that'll be part of this transit report. So that's all happening in the background. But in the meantime, while this week is going on, we've got some really interesting and dynamic energies taking place. On Saturday, I'll be talking about Mars' third and final opposition to Pluto. This is a huge transit, one of the biggest of the year. It started in November with the first opposition, and then we had the second opposition in January. And now here on Saturday, April 26th, we're going to have the third opposition. And so that's going to be part of all the energy this week. And as I'll get into the charts in just a moment to say that it's pretty strong frequency. And so again, I just want to remind everyone to find their sense of balance, inner security, using whatever modalities you may prefer to relax ourselves, because we are in the final week of the lunar cycle. These are transformative times. In fact, it's an incredibly transformative year. Any astrologer will tell you that 2025 is one of the most epic astrological years in modern history. So there is a lot going on, but there's nothing to fear. I think that it's kind of like the fortune cookie that says, may you live in interesting times. Well, we are definitely living in interesting times, and I think this week will be one of them. But there's some real support in the transits as well, and that's why I like to do these reports, to see where can we find this support, where can we look to for strength and solace, and of course, always following our personal authority from our human design body graph. So with all that being said, let me pull my charts up, and we'll take a look at the week. And if you do get some support out of these videos, I always appreciate the likes or the subscribes. We appreciate growing our community at Emerge by Design, and it helps us a lot. So let me go ahead and get this going here. So here we have both the body graph on the left and the astrological wheel on the right for Monday, April 21st. All of these charts are set for noon Mountain Time, except for the lunation. So when we get to the new moon, I'll have the charts for the exact time of that new moon on Sunday. And also in the astrological wheel, they're always set to 0 degrees Aries. I don't talk about the house systems in these reports because that would vary depending on your location on the planet. But it is helpful to use the information I give here and take a look at your own chart and see what house some of these transits are falling in. And that can help point in the areas of your life that you may be experiencing them if you haven't already felt it already, which you may very well be. Again, we're coming off that intense third quarter moon yesterday. And as we look at the sun today on Monday, still in gate 3, line 6, over here in Taurus. And gate 3 is the gate of ordering. This is part of the channel of mutation. So whenever we have the life force energy of the sun in an individual gate, it can be stimulating and resonating with whatever individual gates are activated in your chart. So yesterday, the sun was exactly square Mars. So today on Monday, we're just past the perfection of that aspect, but still very much in play this week, as we can see right here, squaring Mars over in gate 56. Now, I'm going to talk a little more at length on this chart on Monday to really set the stage. What are the archetypes I'll be sharing right now are going to be in play all week, and then we'll take the day by day after that. So yes, we have this sun square Mars, the life force energy and vitality of the sun, and Mars, the god of war, aggression, conflict, pushing boundaries out into the world. This is a very dynamic square. Could be a really healthy time to express energy, right? Doing some walking or hiking or whatever sporting activity you might be in. This is a good way to relieve some of that frequency that is so intense. And it's working on a T-square with Pluto in gate 41. Again, this was already in effect for a few days, and we're going to be feeling it for most of this week. So if we take the life force energy of the sun, the action-oriented, pushing out boundaries of Mars, and then the planet Pluto, Lord of the underworld, transformation, mutation, incredible T-square, promoting dynamic opportunity for growth, development, and mutating what was old and past and dying into something new. So that's a pretty dynamic frequency to be describing right there. And it's going to continue to build as Mars, as I mentioned, is moving toward its exact opposition to Pluto, which will take place on Saturday. So again, just to review a little, that as Mars was moving forward back in November and it went into Leo, it made its first opposition to Pluto. Then it turned retrograde at 6 degrees Leo and went back into Cancer. For a couple of months, we had Mars in Cancer. Then it stationed and turned forward again. And we're getting our third opposition here. So again, just to think about these archetypes, it's a very powerful opposition, and it's been going on for months. And this is really the crescendo or the grand finale. So wherever this falls in your astrological chart in terms of the house system, we're thinking about power. Mars in opposition to Lord of the Underworld. We're dealing with our shadows, our own personal underworld, how we may be experiencing personal self-empowerment or disempowerment, or we may feeling projections of the other, right? It's just a very power-oriented conversation, if you will, going on. And I think that we maybe have seen this in relationships. You know, we had our full moon a week ago in Libra. The new moon to that full moon was in Aries. So we were dealing with the Aries-Libra axis for this lunar cycle, about my own Aryan self-confident, how I push myself out into the world, meeting up with the full moon in Libra. How is that working in relationships, right? What is the dynamic? So we may be finding sort of this power struggle in different areas. It could be in work, career, relationship, or individual. Now, we're certainly seeing this on the global scale with just horrendous mass conflicts everywhere, but it's all tied back to this particular aspect. But we're dealing with Pluto, tremendous opportunity for growth and development and deep inner psychological transformation. So I think as we navigate this week can be really supportive when we experience friction on the external world, conflict, altercation. The natural reaction is to emotionally react. We still have a lot of energy in the solar plexus in Pisces, which I'll get to in a moment. But I think if we can pause, take a deep breath, and be curious. Why am I being triggered by this? What can I find within myself that I can look at, that I can alter, change, mutate? Having this Pluto so directly involved is really offering the access to transformation. Also want to mention that Mars moved into Leo just 2 days ago, back on, well, Friday. And after having been in Cancer, as I mentioned, for months, a bit challenged there. We may have felt some emotional insecurities, maybe emotionally reactive in our relationships or in our family world. Maybe we learned a lot during these last couple of months, but now Mars having moved into Leo, fixed fire, there's real opportunity. Mars is much more comfortable in this fixed fire sign to take that action in a courageous way forward. Mars is also having, now that I've covered this very dynamic, potent T-square that will be with us all week here, I want to look to where can we find some support with dealing with this energy. And we can see that Mars is also in a trine to Neptune, who has also recently entered the sign of Aries. Currently, Neptune is in gate 25, line 3. Well, gate 25 is called the spirit of the higher self. It's part of that individual circuit group as well. It speaks to, it's the gate of innocence, being able to withstand the shock and initiation and still experience the innocence of our higher self. And I think that's another great contemplation for the week. Neptune is also the planet of imagination, creativity. Right? How can we use this Neptunian dream world to access our own sense of transformational innocence, which can be very supportive? It helps get us out of that blame, shame, victim mode. But I think that Neptune is really lending a hand right now if we can lean into our own sense of innocence during this rather conflictual period that's going on. Additionally, I want to bring in all these planets still in Pisces into the mix. We've got Venus And Saturn, along with the North Node, all in 26 degrees Pisces, which is gate 36. Here's the North Node 36, Venus in gate 36, and Saturn in gate 36. Now, when we think about the planet Venus, love, beauty, Venus represents what we want, that internal harmony, harmony within our relationships. She's just beautiful and sensual and really represents our desires of what we want in life. But she's been lined up with Saturn for quite a while now because Venus has gone retrograde, now moving forward, and will be traveling with Saturn sort of just neck and neck all week long. And when we take the attributes of Saturn, father time, limits, this lessons, he's the taskmaster. It's a very interesting dynamic when we think about the archetype in Venus and Saturn together. One of the images I get is thinking of a beautiful piece of fruit ripening, right? And then it just gets to that zenith of its delectability. But we know that if we aren't able to eat it, then it falls off the tree and then it dies and shrivels. And so Saturn is always reminding us that we can't get away from time. But if we lean into it with growth and maturity, we will find that, right? He brings this recognition of cycles and maturity. And so the fact that we have Venus here and all of this is happening in that archetype of gate 36, which is in the solar plexus, dealing with emotional growth and development in the archetype of crisis, we are all going through some new type of emotional experience. All new experience brings some element of crisis. And so here we have this beautiful, sensual planet of Venus and the hard knocks and limitations of Saturn. To me, it really lends itself to this idea of deep, harmonic, emotional growth and development if we can stay centered, stay connected to our authority, not get out in front of ourselves, not blame the other for our emotional crisis or feel victim that the world is just against us. We've all traveled that entire spectrum. It's normal as a human being, but I think what the chart is showing us here is there's real opportunity for healing and growth right now. And I really think you'll hear me keep saying that because I think that's where the support is. If we get caught up in the noise out there, we can really get lost in the weeds. In fact, when I think of noise, I'm kind of thinking about Mercury, who's also in Aries right now. Mercury's in gate 17. This is the archetype of logical opinions. And Mercury's the planet of communication. I think there's going to be a lot of opinions in the media out there right now of people telling us what we should or shouldn't do, and just to be mindful of that. But I think the support right now is coming from our inner world, our Neptunian world of dreams and imagination, and how we envision ourselves pushing ourselves into the world with that courageous, valorous Mars energy. Additionally, another area of tremendous support is that Venus, Saturn, and the North Node at that 26 degrees, they're all in a sextile to Uranus right now, still in Taurus. Well, Uranus is in gate 8, another individual gate. It's called the gate of contribution. It's our individual inspiration being contributed to the larger group goals in that sense. So it's this idea of what is my contribution? Uranus is the planet of shock, revolution, technology. It's very innovative. And I think that support, recognizing that these turbulent emotional times we're in right now, this sextile is showing us that there's real opportunity for how does this transform me in a plutonic way? How have I evolved? How have I changed? And what is my inspiration as a result of these times that we're living through? And that inner individual circuit group keynoting that I keep sharing for those of you that know human design, it's this inner world right now is where the support is. How am I finding my voice of authenticity? Raw, brutal honesty and truth in my expression and sharing my inspiration with the world. It's a very potent time for that. But again, the other end of that spectrum is to get lost in the noise, to feel like the world is out to get us and we can lean into that victimization. It's just not going to be helpful right now. But if we're standing strong in our truth, we will meet the opportunities and the people that can show us what we need to learn about ourselves. So that really sets the stage for Monday. Let's go ahead and start moving the chart forward. We'll go into Tuesday. On Tuesday, the sun will move into gate 27 in Taurus. And I really am appreciating that this is what we have coming up right now. As I'm talking about this Sun, Mars, Pluto, T-square, it's frictional, it's dynamic, it's very power-oriented in struggle and conflict. But here the sun moves into gate 27 down in the sacral center. This is called the gate of caring. It speaks very much to the idea of self-nourishment. And I really want to emphasize that sun location, because I think this is another very helpful supportive aspect as we go through this week. How are we taking care of ourselves? You know, it is the last week of the lunar cycle, and I often say that's the week when we can reevaluate our boundaries, right? Are there things I need to do to tend to the garden of my soul right now? Are there relationships that I've been thinking aren't helping or serving me that I need to let go? Maybe some people may feel toxic or adversarial. Well, this is a great time to do that. But just to say that with the life force energy in the gate of caring, how are we taking care of ourselves? Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, of course, we can't take care and support others as well. So really, really supportive location for the sun in terms of that archetype. This puts the polarity where the Earth is in gate 28. This is in the splenic awareness center. It's called the gate of the game player. And life involves risk. It's part of the channel of stubbornness, but it speaks to our individual search for purpose. And to find deep, meaningful purpose, we sometimes do need to take risks that help us grow and evolve our health, wellness, and sustainability to face the future. So recognizing that this very dynamic Plutonic Mars energy this week, we may have to take big steps that may feel like a risk, but if we're keeping centered on our self-nourishment with the sun in Taurus, this can be really supportive. I also want to mention on Tuesday, another supportive aspect, as the moon is traveling through Aquarius, currently in gate 49 as the time of this noontime chart, the moon is forming a sextile with Chiron. You know, the moon represents our inner emotional world, that unconscious reactive emotionality. And having a supportive sextile with Chiron, the wounded healer, means that Tuesday's another day where we can really check in on our progress. What have we learned? Chiron is not only the wounded healer, but in Greek mythology, he was one of the greatest philosophers and teacher of all time. And it's this opportunity where as we learn, we can teach. And what are we learning about our own personal healing process right now? You know, whenever we're being triggered, there's an opportunity to be curious. Why am I feeling so hurt right now? What have I brought forward from my past? Maybe my family of origin or wherever in my past do I need self-nourishing support right now to grow and heal and evolve? And it's being so supported not only by the moon sextile Chiron himself, but Chiron, who doesn't get an activation in the body graph, but if he did, he's in gate 42. This is called the archetype of growth. It speaks to evolution. It speaks to a cycle of emotional development coming to a close for another round of emotional evolution. And so what a supportive place for Chiron to be right now. If we're doing this sort of idea of working on ourselves and finding out, why am I triggered? How can I self-nourish better so that I can remain balanced and regulated within my own body to love myself more, we are going to need to heal and grow emotionally. And so we're getting a large opportunity from that. And I think on Tuesday, that moon, although it's temporary, the moon moves very fast, we're getting a lot of support for that on Tuesday. Now, I'm also going to mention as the moon moves through gate 49 in the mandala, the gate and archetypes of the I Ching around the astrological wheel, over the next few days until the moon will be moving like this through the wheel. And we'll be going through finishing up Aquarius and moving through Pisces. And while the moon is doing that, starting here on Tuesday in Aquarius at gate 49, the moon will be transiting all of the gates in the solar plexus except one. The only gate not found in that region of the wheel is gate 6, However, gate 6 is opposite gate 36. So even though the moon will not conjunct gate 6, it will be opposing gate 6 while it's in 36, which is where Saturn and Venus are. Okay, that's a mouthful. All that just to say, what we're bringing the emotional quality of our inner world represented by the moon, transiting through the solar plexus, the center of feelings and emotional experience. So these final few days leading up into the new moon, I sense are going to be very emotional. And I think it's going to be a fantastic time to sit with our emotions. Just feel them in a safe space in our home where we feel secure and to really go where they take us. Not to blame anyone for these emotions, not to shame ourselves. Why am I feeling so emotional? But to be with them, to be curious about what's going on here, to feel these sensations in our body. We're going to get a real opportunity to do that and to see where that leads us in our path of emotional growth and development. So that's on Tuesday. Let's go ahead and move into Wednesday. And on Wednesday is when the sun will form that exact square to Pluto. So I've mentioned this T-square. We already had the sun square Mars on Sunday. And now on Wednesday, the sun will move into that exact opposition to Pluto. Again, whenever we have these squares that I'm talking about, we're talking about very dynamic energy, very confrontational in a sense. But it's the friction and the confrontation that presents the opportunity for growth and development. It always makes me think of Gate 6 in the Ray V. Ching. The tagline for Gate 6 is the fundamental design component of progress is the law that growth does not exist without friction. And I think that'll be another helpful contemplation to keep in our minds with all these squares going on, remembering that they represent opportunity. If we don't get lost in the struggle, but stay firmly planted in our authority and authenticity, we have great opportunity and support for development. So back to Wednesday, that sun makes that exact square to Pluto. So again, we're thinking about shadow work. We're thinking about our underworld. What have we been putting off that we should deal with right now? I would imagine you're going to have things coming at you that remind you of, oh, there it is again. I didn't deal with that yet. Again, whether it's something internally regarding our own sense of self-empowerment, possibly it's in a relationship and we're having a conflict with power struggles in the family or romantic romance. All of these things could be in play. But Pluto is speaking to us from gate 41 right now. Gate 41 in the body graph down here in the root pressure center is called the gate of contraction. It's the limitation of resources that will maximize the production. It's the start codon for a new cycle of emotional growth and development. And so here's Pluto saying, okay, let's go into our own personal underworld. What do we need to look at? What do we need to see that we haven't been seeing before? It takes a bit of courage to do that. It can take a large dose of humility, right? Getting out of that blame shame game is not easy work, but the transits are saying now could be the time. Due to this sun square Pluto and Mars on the other side, and while Mars has been doing that, I didn't mention this on the first chart, Mars was in gate 56 prior to this chart, and Mars has been there transiting gate 36, which is at the gate of stimulation. Right? What is the stories we're telling? We can tell how well we've dealt with the past when we simply listen to how am I sharing my emotional experiences from the past? Do you hear a frequency of empowerment or disempowerment? And I think that'll be another helpful thing to take a look at this week to calibrate where we are in our own journey. There's no goal here. There's no work to be done, but to simply be and find deeper appreciation and self-love through that process. But yes, here's Pluto saying, let's take a look at the underworld. Let's let things go that are no longer serving us, whether it be patterns or habits or any self-destructive behavior. And let's mutate that. Let's alter that into a self-nourishing, healthy, self-supporting framework and within a pattern, in a sense. And Mars and this Wednesday chart, very much part of this T-square all week long, has moved into gate 31. Gate 31 in the body graph here in the throat expression center is called the gate of influence. And that's the gate it'll be in as we approach the exact opposition on Saturday. So I'll say a few more things about that when we get to Saturday's chart. But also just want to mention that Venus and Saturn still traveling in lockstep. Venus hasn't quite caught up with Saturn yet because they're both moving forward. But they are making their conjunction here in gate 36, line 5. Line 5 in the human design system represents universal truth. It's about the practical truth that we can all benefit from. And so as I mentioned that frequency of Venus, Saturn earlier, just remember that as we think about this gate 36, and each day they're getting closer and closer, there's real opportunity to find that tranquility of Venus, harmony with inside ourselves and harmony in our relationships. If we bring the Saturnian lessons that we've learned and apply that maturity into the growth and development, fantastic opportunity. Yeah. And I always appreciate you guys' comments. If this is resonating with you and you have a personal experience you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear it. We're going through this too in our own world. So we are in this community together and we are here for you. But yeah, just that Venus-Saturn gate 36, there's a lot to unpack there, but it really is speaking to this deep emotional stimulation that we are going through. And as I mentioned, the moon, and here we are on Wednesday, just about forming conjunctions with these planets. The moon's going to conjunct Venus, then the North Node, then Saturn, and then move into Aries and also touch on Neptune and Mercury. So this moon going through the solar plexus, embrace our emotions, sit with them, ask them, what are you speaking? Our body conscious, our own personal body consciousness knows our truth. It already knows our life purpose. Listening to it can be very illuminating during these days ahead right now. Okay, let's go ahead and move into Thursday. And yes, here with Thursday, again, that moon going to be conjunct all those planets. I've already mentioned that basically. Let's take a look at Friday. I'm going to save some time in this video because I really want to get to the weekend and talk about that Pluto-Mars opposition and the new moon on Sunday. And on Friday, again, you could just look at this T-square over here. It's there all week. There's no place to run. And again, I really hope that I'm certainly don't want to encourage any fear or anxiety over such dynamic energy. I truly see the potential here. Just spending some time with ourselves, in a safe, secure environment, communicating love and appreciation with our partners and our family right now, there's real undercurrents of support for that right there. And I think that, again, there's nothing to fear here. We may see it out in the media. I'm not going to get too caught up in that this week, just to recognize that I won't be surprised if we have dramatic developments and all of the conflicts we're looking at right now. But I like to approach these transits from an internal process. How am I evolving towards self-empowerment? And that's why I really appreciate what we're looking at in these charts right now. Real support there. So you can see the moon here might be another noisy day on Friday because the moon is joining up with Mercury in that gate 17. So here we're hearing emotionality to this communication of logical opinions. Everybody's going to have an opinion here. And so again, it's just going to be a matter of us following our own personal authority and where our energy and body takes us. All right, let's go ahead and get into Saturday, April 26th. Okay, we do see this one channel of the money line forming in the body graph. That's because Mercury has moved into gate 21 in Aries, with Jupiter still in gate 45. Now, this particular channel is called the money line, and it speaks to tribal resources. If it's in an individual chart, it's a sign of tribal leadership for that individual. But when I look at it from the collective, I think it really is presenting us with the heart of the matter right now in terms of collective conflict. How are we going to take care of each other? We don't seem to be doing a very good job right now. we are in maximization of polarity. It's all these factions where it's us against them and there's the enemy. But I think with this dynamic Pluto-Mars transit and this particular channel showing up during this time period is really offering us the question, how are we going to move into a space where we're sharing the resources in a courageous, valorous way with everyone? We've got to find new ways. I think we're heading there with Pluto and Aquarius. I believe we're going to be living in a completely different world by this time next year. So we're just going to have to stay tuned for that. I obviously don't make any predictions in these reports, but I do want to provide the support that things are happening at a rapid pace. If it's feeling overwhelming or if it's producing anxiety, self-nourish. I keep wanting to point back to that sun in gate 27 here in line 6 on Saturday. Self-nourishment right now, daily doses of that can be really helpful. Okay, but I do want to point out that as we look at that Mars here at the noontime chart is just 8 minutes of a degree from the exact opposition. Now, that Mars-Pluto opposition will perfect at 7:30 or 7:23 p.m. Mountain Time. So that's why this week is sort of leading up to that crescendo. It's interesting how most of the other aspects in the wheel, you can see they've sort of faded away right now. This is the main stage, if you will. And just want to hone in on that Mars at the time of the third opposition. It's in that gate 31, the gate of influence in Leo, in this fire sign. And I think that, again, if we've gone through some cathartic, mutative, transformative process, we're going to come out the other end of this with a newfound sense of influence in our expression of leadership. And it's not about whether you have this gate activated or not. I mean, that's important if we're doing an individual analysis of your chart, but I'm speaking just from contemplations. What can we take from this latest cycle of Mars and Pluto tangling in this opposition? And we're examining and investigating, where is my power? Where are shadows from my past making me feel disempowered? If this is the questions we're giving ourselves with a curious nature aligned with our personal authority, there's no telling how much influence that this particular cycle of time may be supporting you as we move forward and past this incredible transit. And again, want to mention not only Mars in 31 with the gate of influence, but also that Uranus in gate 8. Wonderful time to feel into your eccentricity. Uranus being that wild card in the planets, right? We just never know. It's shocking. It's revolutionary. It's very forward thinking technology. It's a very creative, stimulating, sudden planet. And it's in this circuitry, individual circuit group, which is all those keynotes as well. It's very creative. It's very mutative. It's very dynamic. And I think, we can really lean into that energy following our authority, even though that gate may not be one of your personal activations. If we're working on self-empowered creativity right now, the winds are at our back. So I think that's really sort of again, a supportive way to find solace in such conflictual times. The other very helpful aspect going on Saturday, and it's just, there can be such spontaneous support from these transits. I think you're like, all this stuff's happening in one area and then you land on another. And like, oh, but we have that kind of the saving grace. And what we have is the moon forming a conjunction with that Chiron in gate 42. We're always living in cycles within cycles within cycles. But this particular cycle of power and confrontation and how that's affecting my personal sense of self-empowerment, while that third opposition happens, to have the moon and Chiron, the wounded healer, in gate 42 is suggesting that we are coming towards a close here. That with the inner work, with putting our attention and awareness on where we can enhance our self-power and authenticity, we're reaching a close. That's gate 42 is the part of the channel of maturation. In every cycle of emotional growth, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. And with Chiron and the moon at the 42, at the time of this third opposition, is very powerful, very potent, and very supportive for whatever, if this is resonating in your own personal story of power conflict and how you're evolving as a person from that, you'll find the support, I think, from that contemplation. So then we're in the balsamic moon here, right? We're in the final hours of this lunar cycle. I just want to suggest that it's, again, a wonderful time to reflect, to calm our nervous system, to find sense of grounding, appreciation for where we've been and where we may be going, because we're going to move into our new moon on Sunday, April 27th. This is taking place at 7 degrees and 46 minutes of Taurus. Well, we're in the sign of Taurus. So this new cycle of emotional development, we're thinking of everything Taurus and Venus. Our home, our family, what feels grounding, resources. How many or few you have doesn't matter. What matters is what matters. What's important to us to ground ourselves into that feeling of nourishment that we just came out of with gate 27, but also feeling that Venusian nourishment, really soothing ourselves. Now, the new moon itself is going to take place in gate 24, line 1. This is in the Ajna Center. It's called the gate of rational, it's a hard word to say, rationalizing. Gate 24 is called the gate of return, right? This is where our mind goes over and over and over, returning to see, have I missed any details? This is also part of individual circuitry. It's been quite a theme you've been hearing me say during this report. And so when we think about line one is the line of investigation, introspection. We're looking for the foundation of what is important concerning my inner truth. It's part of the channel of awareness, the design of a thinker, but it's very oriented on inner truth. How do I conceptualize what is my truth? And so with the new moon, a new cycle, a new beginning, here we have this opportunity and support to reflect and conceptualize and think about, where is my truth? Where do I go back and heal the wounds from the past and bring forth growth and development into the present? And speaking of the present, what a great time to be present. Very potent at the time of the new moon. And I think those types of reflections will be very supportive. When we look at a new moon chart, we're getting a snapshot of the archetype of the coming lunar cycle. So some of these things I've already talked about are still in play. We're still dealing with this gate 36, where we have Saturn still. Now, Venus, which was with Saturn in gate 36, has now moved into a conjunction with Neptune within a couple degrees, but both Venus and Neptune are in gate 25. Again, that gate of innocence, spirit of the higher self. During this lunar cycle, how can I ground myself into Mother Gaia, into what I feel is my supporting aspects in my life, the people that are in my life, and how do we stand strong there to move like the bull. The bull is fierce, and when the bull moves forward, there's no stopping it. So these are some of the elements and the archetypes, I think, as we head into that next cycle. But I really am going to be thinking about gate 25, gate 8, individual contribution of personal inspiration, and how do I have a newfound influence from this Mars transit, where I've gone back into my shadows, to being strong and courageous, to look at where things were difficult or challenging or traumatic, and how have I evolved as a person. How, sometimes it's like we look back, and what used to be what we called our worst experience of our life may now be shared with our new voice, the most transformative aspect of my life. The worst things become the greatest learning lessons that actually forge the steel of my soul and my spirit of who I am. Well, I believe we're in those kinds of times, and I think if we're staying present, regulating our body, and staying true to our authenticity, tremendous support in all regards for that type of activity. I also want to close by mentioning, if you'd like some support in dealing with these challenging times, my partner, Brandy Jordan, has a somatic toolbox in our webpage, emergebydesign.net. She's got some wonderful contemplations, as well as how we can nourish our body. how we can regulate our nervous system so that we can have that calm peace that we're all in search of and is very healthy to our nervous system. Please check that out if you like. And again, thank you for the likes and the subscribes and for listening. I wish you all well and appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, and bye for now.